Ladies and gentlemen, SideStrafe here today with something really special. We're taking a look at Iron Front, Liberation 1944, and while this is indeed the ArmA 2 engine, this is no mod. This is actually a full-blown game set to hit retail on May 25th. It should also eventually be available on Steam if that suits your preference. However, what we're going to do today is just kind of look at some of this footage and talk about why I am really excited about this one and why I think anybody who loves ArmA and perhaps has an interest or fascination with World War II will definitely want to pick up this title. Now, first and foremost, the game features a lot of new content. You can play as the Germans or the Soviet Union. They each are playable in single-player campaign modes, scenarios, as well as the online modes, and a few of which are actually fresh to this title. Beyond that, there's a wide variety of small arms weaponry and equipment, various player models and skins available for each of the characters, and of course 40 or so vehicles ranging from troop transport all the way up to tanks and fighter planes. Now, while the game does inherit some of the ArmA engine's problems or bugs, it does seem to also make some improvements upon it. For example, the animation and posing system seems a little bit different. When we rode into battle on the back of the Panther tanks, you'll notice that we were situated in such a way that just seemed a little bit more natural. In regards to the death animations, there actually seems to be some. For example, you appear to clutch your wounds when falling to the ground, or there just seems to be a few extra steps into hitting the ground when you die or when killing an opponent. Whereas in ArmA 2, I felt like even if I headshot somebody, there was this odd delay to when the character or AI would decide to die. Now, I suppose that if I did have to complain about something in regards to the aesthetics department, it would definitely come down to the sound effects. Most of the small arms or hull-mounted machine guns sound really tinny and weak, and quite unlike anything I've ever actually heard in real life. Now, I know that real World War II weapons, or sometimes in some countries, weapons are unavailable for recording, but I would hope that online there are plenty of royalty-free or licensed resources available that would be a better substitution. However, I really don't think it's that big of a deal, definitely not a game breaker, and is of course something that can be replaced in time with either DLC or patches. But now it is time to discuss one of my favorite parts of the game, the armored combat, and as you can see we are inside the belly of the beast. This is a King Tiger tank rolling into some heavy fire, and in fact we're actually bouncing shots off of the front hull here, and this is what this tank was designed to do. But other than that, you can notice that they've taken the time to draw or create a 2D interior that helps us get a little bit more of a feel for being inside the tank. You'll also notice that touch with the commander's cupola, and you'll see his hand at the bottom section of the screen. However, the real magic comes into play when you talk about the damage model of the tanks. For example, I think the last extremely realistic tank sim that I ever played was probably World War II Online, and this game actually features a similar system. So let's think of some examples. Tank takes a hit. The round hopefully will bounce off of your armor. Common knowledge, front armor is going to be thicker than that of on the sides or the rear of the tank. So when you're in combat, you want to face the tank towards the direction of fire. But let's say that round doesn't bounce and it penetrates. What's going to happen? This is where the game actually starts to think about that in a very realistic way. For example, let's say it hits the front hull, somehow it manages to penetrate. Where did it pen? Did it hit the driver's hatch? In that case, if it went through there, say goodbye to your driver. But even furthermore, let's say the round actually passed through the driver, killing him, continuing forward. If it didn't take anybody else out on the way through, maybe it gets all the way back to the engine compartment, hits the engine, disables the engine. Or maybe there's a percentage chance that it actually caught the engine on fire, and now your tank's on fire, and your guys have to get out. But worse than that, maybe it hits the side of the hull or the side of the turret and hits an ammo rack. Ammo rack explodes, The turret blows off of the hull because, as we know, most of the turrets are held down by gravity alone, and you have a fantastic explosion. So beyond that, I just find it really fascinating that there are so many little variables and attentions to detail that I think will make this probably one of the best tank simulations, at least for World War II based combat, in a very long time. On top of that, there's a decent amount of very well-known and classic tanks. On the German side, we've got the Stug, Panzer IV, Panther, and King Tiger, as well as IS, T-34 variants, and the SUs for the Soviet Union. So I'm pretty sure that'll make most tankers fairly happy, including myself, as we roll out from our victory here with the dreaded King Tiger. Now, let's take a look at one of the game's new multiplayer modes called Blitzkrieg, where it's kind of a mix between Battlefield's Conquest and Rush modes, except it's nowhere near as linear, meaning that with the size of these maps, you actually have many options to attack the point from, and it makes it that much more challenging for the defenders. It's also nice having such a gameplay mode because it does allow for a little bit more direct confrontation in a quicker amount of time. However, it still maintains that extreme amount of realism that we come to expect from any ArmA engine-based game. Now, as you can see here, the team is in the process of capturing a point. Once we've taken it, the defenders will no longer be allowed to retake it and will have to fall back. This also gives the attacking team a forward base from which to spawn from. You can also take note of the newly added minimap in the lower right hand corner, which basically gives the entire team an overview of the situation. You can see spotted enemies as well as the next capture point to take. This can of course be disabled in the server side options if you so desire a little bit more realism. Now, the following footage is basically a good example of how we're going to have to rely on old-fashioned iron sights for the majority of your playtime. Unless you're a sniper, you're going to always be at this disadvantage, especially in these extremely huge and wide open maps. But the fact that this is a World War II game in itself speaks volumes, because I feel that a lot of modern day shooters implement technologies that for video games almost feel like a cheat. For example, having thermal vision or lock-on guidance systems for vehicles can just really take away the challenge, and when it comes down to gameplay for something that we're playing on a computer, it just doesn't always work, and in a lot of cases it hurts the balance. So I think the fact that this is just World War II raw, this is actually going to be a nice treat for those of us that want that old school challenge. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I have to say my overall first impressions are obviously quite positive. I'm really excited about this coming out at the end of the month, and I think it will make for some really good video content on YouTube. And I have to say, overall, this is just but a taste. For what's included in the game, it's worth any price point they want to throw at it, because with the single-player campaign for both nations, scenarios, multiplayer gameplay modes, the sheer amount of weaponry, vehicles, maps available to us, there's more here than a lot of the $60 AAA titles that we're paying for these days. And more importantly, you can see the passion included with the game, because that's what the developers have, and that's what a lot of developers of today are missing. So that's why I am more than excited about this title and happy to give it my stamp of approval. So with that said, if you want to know more about Iron Front Liberation 1944, check out my link in the description below, and in the meantime, please enjoy this epic gameplay finale.